Hello, and welcome to the Homeschooling and Loving It podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, your friend at homeschool.com and homeschool mom of 6. Join us as we keep it real and chat about the ups and downs of this amazing adventure we call the homeschool life. So grab a cup of your warm favorite and a comfy chair, and let's get started. So hello, everyone, and welcome to homeschool.com's Homeschooling and Loving It podcast. We are thrilled to have a special guest with us today. Super excited to be back with you and back doing our podcasts again. But in today's episode, we're going to unravel some of the mysteries behind a great homeschooling experience. And we've invited Carrie Strong to join us today to discuss the fact that you can homeschool. All right, so let me introduce you to Carrie. Carrie Strong is an experienced homeschooling mom of 4 children. She has a background in education and taught both in the Dominican Republic and the US before getting married and having her own children. She and her family now reside in northern Michigan, where she enjoys homeschooling, of course, writing books, blogging, being outdoors, singing, and hobby farming. And Carrie is passionate about helping other prospective homeschooling parents gain the confidence and encouragement needed to begin or sustain their homeschooling journey, which is why she wrote the book, You Can Homeschool. Carrie also loves Jesus and nature and uncovering what messages God might be speaking through his creation. And you can find her inspirations from creation, as well as her book, at her website, www.strongroots.farm. All right, so Carrie, I want you to talk now. Can you share a little bit about how you got into homeschooling? What started your journey?
Sure, yeah. And thanks again so much for having me and letting me share. I never thought that I would be a homeschooling mom. So I am super task oriented. And growing up, I always watched these moms who juggled taking care of their kids while getting things done. And I'm like, I don't know how they do it, because there's just the laundry and the dishes and the cooking and the cleaning. I'm like, that's just so much. So I always thought that if I ever had kids one day, I would immediately enroll them in school when the time came, to get back to all the things that I needed to get done. So I was very task oriented, still am, but hopefully I'm a work in progress and still becoming more people oriented. But so I did that. I enrolled my son Elijah at the time. He was 5. Enrolled him into a Montessori school, and it was a great school. There was nothing wrong with it. He loved his teachers. He loved his friends. He was doing well. But he would come home in the evenings, and I just felt like I didn't have my same son anymore. I felt like he got the leftovers of me, and I got the leftovers of him. And sadly, I even saw his attitude change even at the age of 5. He became cocky, and I was like, where is this attitude coming from? And it really bothered me that I had so little time with him. And I just got to thinking, like, some moms only have moments with their kids. Their child might be born and only have a few moments there, or some they don't even get to experience the birth. And I have cousins and friends who have lost their children at a very young age. And so I started praying with my husband about homeschooling. And I'm like, I don't know why I feel like I want to do this, because it was never something that was even on my radar. And we read a verse that says, teach us to number our days so that we may gain a heart of wisdom. And for me, that was like the nail in the coffin. It was like, I don't know how much time I have with them, and I want to be the person in their life that they grow up with. And so that's where we started. And then we ended up writing the school a letter telling them by Christmas time that we were going to pull them out, and properly going through the procedure to do that, which was very simple. Just writing a note, making sure that they were on board and they knew. And on Christmas, he was ours again. So, and it was, I don't look back. It was definitely a grace from the Lord. Something I feel like even every day I couldn't do on my own strength. And I'm very thankful that we started homeschooling.
Yes, wonderful story. I love it. So in the process of your journey in homeschooling, what prompted you to write your book?
Yeah, so COVID was definitely a major influence to writing that. My dad had gotten sick during 2020, not from COVID. He had a stroke, and they were living out in Arizona at the time. So my family and I decided to move out to Arizona to help my mom take care of him. And my sister, who also lives out there, she has four children, and during that time, she was interested in homeschooling. So because I had experienced a lot of what not to do with homeschooling and what to do and things that I had learned, I was like, well, hold up, let me give you like just some quick cliff notes and like hopefully that will help you on like as you get started. So I wanted to tell her like what's the Charlotte Mason or the Charlotte Mason, am I saying that right? Yeah, method. And there's so many different methods out there. So I wanted to give her just like the basics. And then I started writing, and lo and behold, it turned into a book. So yeah, and then I actually presented it to a publisher, and they said that's not enough content. You need to double your content. So I started thinking, well, what could I do that would also help moms, just besides giving them the basics of like each of the different methods? And the thought came to me to start interviewing different moms because I always wanted to know, like, what does a day in a life look like for you? And what does your homeschooling world look like? And like, am I missing something? Or what ideas could I gain from somebody else? So I ended up interviewing 10 different moms and just learned so much from them. And one mom in particular, who does the extreme opposite of what I was doing at the time, she unschools her kids. It was really interesting to me. And so she ended up actually writing the chapter on unschooling in my book.
Okay. So is this,
Yeah.
I noticed your book says you had a collaboration with Megan Todd. Is that Megan then?
Correct. Yep, that's Megan.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep,
Yes.
absolutely. Well, good. That is really interesting. I'm not an unschool homeschool mom either. And so I've always been fascinated by that myself. So I'm gonna have to look
Mhm.
at your book and get her perspective.
Yeah.
So I know your title is Yes, You Can Homeschool, but what are some of the key things that you address? You said you mentioned the methods
Hmm.
and then kind of the perspective from Megan. Are there anything else, any other hot topics you want to mention that you address in your book?
Yeah, so the first part of it is just sharing different stories from different moms. Because for me, I know that if I feel like I'm not good enough, then I won't do something. So I wanted to start right out just saying, like,
Mhm.
you do not have to have it all together. You do not have to be a teacher. And no matter who you are, if you're called by God to do this, He will give you the strength to do that. So I shared my story and then some different stories from other moms of just the struggles that they had with homeschooling, just to let the reader know that there's no perfect mom out there and we overlook things. And so that's kind of the first part of it. And then I go into the different learning styles because each kid is different. And the beautiful thing about homeschooling is that we can cater our homeschooling classroom, our life to fit whatever learning style or learning ability that our children have. So, and to also fit our teaching style. So I talk about like the different teaching styles, the different learning styles, and how to cater um, your curriculum to fit your world. So that's the kind of the gist of it for the first part. And then the second part is going into, I think there's 9 different methods that I mentioned that are the main different methods, starting all the way from online learning, traditional classroom learning, going through the classical, Charlotte Mason, all the different methods, all the way to unschooling. So that parents can see like your schoolroom does not have to look like a classroom. And if your kid learns this way, then there are options for you out there. So that's kind of the big chunk of it toward the end. And then just ending again with some stories and inspirational quotes and things like that.
Great. It sounds great. I'm gonna have to look into it. So just as a mom to other moms, what would be some of your best tips to help a fellow homeschool mom who is new to
Yeah,
homeschooling?
sure. My first one that comes to mind is don't compare yourself. You can get ideas from other people, but a lot of times getting those ideas can become overwhelming. and it might make you feel like you should be doing this or you should be doing that. Because for a while I had a really good groove going. And then I started talking to another homeschool mom who had a really good groove going as well. And she had all of these ideas. And I'm like, I should implement that. And before you know it, it's like you're shitting on yourself all the time. Um, and then you lose your joy. So I think even to just keep homeschooling, you can find that groove by getting ideas from other people. And once you find that groove, I mean, stick to it until you need to change things up, but don't do it because some other mom decided that this is what's best for your kids.
Yeah, I agree 100%. That thinking the grass is always greener mentality gets you, especially in homeschooling. I know I love going to homeschool conventions, and that is so dangerous.
Yeah, it can be for sure. Yeah.
Because you see so much amazing stuff.
Hmm.
And oh my word, you're tempted to do all the good things,
Right.
but you
Yep.
just can't fit all the good things
Yeah,
into a normal homeschooling day, can you?
for sure. Yes.
So
And it's
definitely
taken.
setting realistic expectations
Yeah.
and
Yes.
making your homeschool fit what your kids need specifically. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what, in your experience, what are some of the most common challenges? I mean, we just discussed one, but
Mhm.
what are some of the most common challenges that you've run across?
Sure, yeah. Life changes have been a huge one. We went from, especially 2020, I mean, everybody can relate to this, but we went from educating our kids in Indiana and finding a good groove that worked there. And then we moved to Arizona, like I'd said, and my sister wanted help with her kids. So I ended up actually taking on her kids as well as my own. And then my mom helped me as well. So she took the younger ones and did Montessori work with them. And I took the older kids and did more of a traditional style with those kids. So we kind of had to fall back into the rut of what looked like school for a while. And that was probably one of the harder years because I felt like I started to become enslaved to my curriculum again, where I had undone that mentality. Like being a former teacher, it's really hard to undo the mentality that your schoolroom doesn't need to look like the traditional schoolroom because it doesn't make sense that way. A schoolroom is designed for 30 plus students, 20 plus students, and there's a reason that they have the structure and the tests and all of that. But when you're homeschooling, you don't need all that. So to unlearn that in my head was a challenge. And then when I went back to Arizona, we kind of fell back into that route because I had my sister's kids. Um, and I didn't enjoy schooling as much. So when we moved back to the Midwest, um, we have now my kids are in sixth grade as my older two boys are in sixth grade and I have a fourth grader and a 2 year old. And I feel like we are just now getting back into a groove these last 2 years that are finally working for us again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would just say life changes and school has to look different in those different seasons and to just kind of accept that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's actually so similar to my own story.
Oh,
I have an education background myself. And so I come from teaching, a classroom teacher. I was a principal and then decided to homeschool my children at
wow.
that point. And
Mhm.
so I had the same exact challenge, that battle, that mindset that it needs to be a classroom at home. Our
Mhm.
first year was just exactly like that. And I hated it, really, to be honest with you. And it
Mhm.
was, I mean, at that time, I think I had four children and two were, under five. So I was losing my mind trying to make this a classroom,
Yeah.
abide by classroom rules. And oh my word, it was a nightmare. So that
Right.
second year, we changed up everything, just pretty much threw it all out the window and started
Oh,
over. And it's been great ever since. So I agree
that's
100% with you. It has to be you, and I feel like that's something,
Mhm.
it sounds like you share the same message as something I say a lot, just in our homeschool.com little world, is that, make it unique, make it fit your child. You have this amazing opportunity to custom make an
Yeah.
education just for your child's specific needs, and it's such an opportunity for them.
Yes, for sure.
Exciting. So I'm sure, as a mom of four, obviously you're married too, you've mentioned. I'm sure you have other responsibilities, life responsibilities going on. How do you juggle homeschooling and these other things? I know a lot of our
Yeah.
community asks that question. So
Yes, that's a great question. And again, I think that this year has been that groove where I finally am able to stay on top of life at the same time as homeschooling. And it's taken a long time to get there. Um, Definitely the comparison and trying to make my room look like it did in a school was the thing that held me back from that. Trying to look at it as a job and a teacher job is just too much. So this year I've thrown out so much too. I definitely feel like my curriculum has become a tool for me rather than me becoming enslaved to my curriculum. And I think that that is a big key. Um, so what we've done is we get up typically at the same time each day around 8 o'clock. And it's nice because my kids get a full night's rest and I don't have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and it's lovely. And they do chores for about a half hour and then we do Bible time together. And even that's become very relaxed and very, this whole year has just been super relaxed and I've loved it. And I feel like they're learning so much more too. So we just keep it simple. We read a psalm together and we go through and memorize a psalm. It takes us several months to get through one, but so that's all we do for Bible time. It used to be let's follow this curriculum to a T and do these tests and these quizzes. It's like they're not even getting anything out of that. So and so each of our subjects have now I've really catered each subject to my kids, and a lot of it they can do on their own now, which is amazing. So I thought, I'm like, oh my goodness, I don't know how I'm going to do like middle school, high school, because like that's going to be crazy. And how am I going to get stuff done? But this year, now that they're entering those middle school years, has been the easiest year so far because the whole afternoon while my daughter's taking a nap, my 2-year-old is taking a nap or playing in her room quietly. The other ones are downstairs working on their checklist and their math. We do CTC math. I don't know if you've heard that one. Um, so they do, and they love it. Like there's far fewer tears than we've had in a long time. So they do that and it doesn't take them very long. And then they do their spelling and their reading and their writing, and they do pretty much everything on their own. The only thing that I do with them are the subjects that I enjoy doing with them. So in the morning, I go through, we use Gather Round, which is a unit study. And I don't even follow that the way that it's intended. I take one day and stretch it over a week because it was just too much information. So we spend maybe a half an hour working on that, and that covers quite a few subjects except math. So we do our Bible time, our gather round, and then I do some language with them because I enjoy language. Um, and with that, I took a curriculum and chopped it all up. And I'm like, I want my kids to learn all of the things, but this is how I'm going to teach it. So in the afternoon, what I do for language is whatever concept we're learning, I'll find all of those problems through their books to implement that concept. And we'll work on it until they get the idea. And then for their writing assignment, for our unit study, they'll have to write about the thing that we're learning about in our unit study. So right now we're doing North American birds. So this week their writing project was on the seagull. So they're taking what they're learning and they're writing about that, but then I take the concept that we're learning in language and they have to implement that concept into their writing. So for example, this week we were, what were we doing this week? Last week was prefixes and suffixes. So I'm like, every time I see a prefix and suffix in there used correctly, you get a point.
yeah.
Or this week it was funny. I think we had maybe adjectives and they had like hundreds of adjectives in there, which was and it was, so that was kind of how we've done our writing. And then, like I said, the afternoon, they work through their checklist. Most of it's on their own. During that time is when I can write. Sometimes I'll take a nap and do dishes or make bread or whatever I need to get done that day. So yeah, it's been a very relaxed year.
But don't you feel like those relaxed years tend to be the best ones?
Yes.
I have
And
noticed
it's
that over
learning.
over
Like,
my journey.
yes.
Sometimes, like you said, you took a curriculum and you chopped it up and you did what you wanted to do with it. I feel like
Mhm.
sometimes that's just the key, making it, like you've said so many times in our conversation, making your curriculum serve you.
Yes.
And that is so huge. If we can get past that into a place where we're confident and comfortable
Mhm.
with doing that and
Yeah.
just making everything work
Yeah.
for us, it makes life so much easier, doesn't it?
It does. And I feel like they learn more too. Because we're going at a slower pace with certain curriculums, they actually have time to grasp the subject before we move on to something else. And I feel like in the traditional school, you're just cramming so much in for the test. And then I look back and I'm like, I don't remember anything growing up. Like I remember silly things like a triangle means change. And like I find and pick out things that I'm like, well, I remembered this, but there's so little that I actually do remember because there's just information overload.
Yeah, yeah, it really does happen, huh?
Yeah.
But so thankful that for that opportunity to be able to do what we can for our children and make it fit them, make it work for them.
Yeah.
So just as a point of conversation, I know since the pandemic, everything has pretty much changed with the landscape of homeschooling and the number of people homeschooling, the
Hmm.
number of resources. I mean, the market
Yeah.
is just flooded with all types of curriculum and resources and online programs and all of that.
Yeah.
What do
Hmm.
you think the future of homeschooling looks like here in the US? What are
Hmm.
your thoughts?
One question.
I
I
know,
would
right?
like to think, and I think it is moving this way, that it's going to be a lot more nature-based learning, hands-on, learning science because I live on a farm and let's learn how to compost and let's learn about chicken eggs and what's inside the chicken egg and let's learn about plants because we're gardening and let's look at the seed and what happens to the seed and that you almost don't even need all that other stuff because your life is education. And I hope that I hope that that's the direction. I feel like that is a lot of moms resonate with that.
Mhm.
And it really just takes the pressure off to check all the boxes. I mean, if I were to look at my day and be like, what do we do for math today? Well, they had to use a square with my husband to go build a part for the chicken coop that they needed. And so now they're learning like 90-degree angles naturally. Or I'm like, what do we do for science today? I'm trying to like the kids had to bring the chicken water and we put apple cider vinegar in. And why did we do that? Because their stomach. And so there's just so many natural ways to get their education in without it having to follow necessarily a curriculum.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. I feel that too, just as a personal opinion, and see a big difference from when I first started homeschooling my first
Mm.
child to now as I'm kind of wrapping up my homeschool journey to some degree, but also starting again with a grandchild. So we do the same thing, as you mentioned, just bringing school from nature, from life. Uh,
Hmm.
I'd love to talk with you offline about your farm and all of that because we're just kind of like we're just starting on that little side journey ourselves, and it's exciting, and we love to do that with our little grandchildren and bring them into
Oh,
the
that's fun.
chicken education world,
Yes.
which is that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we should probably start wrapping things up. And so, just as we do you have any specific personal advice for a fellow homeschool mom who may be struggling today?
Yeah, I would just take each day and give yourself grace. Let yourself fail. I'll just be totally honest with you. Yesterday, I got into a huge fight with my husband, and like, it wasn't even about him. It was because I was stressed about something else, and like, took it out on my kids. And those days happen. That doesn't mean you're a failure. The Bible says, a righteous man falls 7 times and gets back up. So the fact that you got back up the next day, I mean, that's success. The fact that you fed your kids today, that's success. Like to look at those small successes each day instead of focusing on the failures, which is really me preaching to myself right now. But
Yeah, but it's good that we do that. We need to preach to ourselves some days, don't we?
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So, can you share with our listeners where they can find information about your book and even information about you? And
Sure.
I know I mentioned it earlier, but if you'd like to just share and mention it one more time.
Yeah, so it's published through Westbow Press, so you can find it on Westbow Press. You can get it on Amazon or any other place as well. On my website, there's a link to it as well. So that again is strongroots.farm. Pretty simple. And I have a blog on there, but I will admit I don't. I'm not good about keeping up with it. I'm in the process of writing two other things right now, so I've kind of put that on the back burner. But I do have all my other podcast episodes on there, and the book is on there, and you can go back and read all of my blogs from before because they're not necessarily for right now. They're just more like life lessons that I've learned from nature that the Lord has spoke to me about. So hopefully they can be an encouragement to you too.
Yeah, it sounds beautiful. I hope everybody goes and checks that out. So thank you for joining us, Carrie. I loved having our conversation. It was great. It's nice.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Of course. And we thank our listeners for joining us today. And we hope that you will subscribe to our podcast and join us again in the future. And in the meantime, I just want to encourage you to visit homeschool.com for a lot of free homeschool tools and helps that hopefully will encourage you on your homeschooling journey. And until next time, here's to homeschooling and loving it.